Translation and adaptation of the original video for English-speaking audience was made by Dmitry of MG Owners Australia. All rights to the original content belong to Клубный Сервис channel, and the links are provided in the description of this video. Happy New Year and welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Dmitry and this is MG Owners Australia, and I decided to kick off the new year trying something completely different to any of my videos produced in 2022. Today is an experiment that I need your help with, so that you let me know if this works out, if you actually enjoy this. What you're about to see is my translation of a very good content from one of the Russian creators on YouTube here, called Ilya. He is working in Russia, in Moscow, and they are working on cars. As you know, this is not a political channel, so just a little asterisk there. So let's keep those themes out of this narrative. So Ilya is one of the very talented engineers and mechanics who have been disassembling cars, fixing cars, improving cars, sound insulating cars, all sorts of stuff that they're doing in their auto service in Moscow. Among other things, they are doing stuff that our Australian reviewers are never showing us. They are disassembling cars completely. They're showing us the underbelly. They're showing us how these cars, not just Chinese cars obviously, how they are assembled. I obviously have interest in Chinese manufactured cars, specifically Haval brand, Cherry brand, other kind of brands that maybe and hopefully will come to our shores. Plus, I have international viewership on this channel too, so we might talk about brands such as Geely and others that are not on Australian shores at all, hopefully just yet. Hopefully in future they will emerge. So this is an experiment, my friends. I am gonna translate what Ilya was talking about when they disassembled HAVAL Jolion 2021 model. So that video of his is an amazing video, very insightful, and I think that no one else is gonna give you one. This is part of this experiment. That's where you have to. Let me know in the comments down below if you like this content and if you want me to do more of this translation, adapted translation for Australian and just English-speaking viewer. Let's keep watching and listen to our Russian friend Ilya. Hello everyone, as many of you might remember, my name is Ilya and I am happy to greet you on my auto channel for grown-ups and serious people. I'd like to start this disassembly by remembering a very well-known cartoon called Madagascar. Surely you have seen or heard about it. There was one funny and very favorite character, King Julian, who in reality was just a rather useless grey stripy lemur, but he had very grand ambitions and essentially was spending his time trying to prove to the other characters that he was much better than he really was. Today we're obviously not talking about cartoons, but we're looking at HAVAL Jolion 2021 model. All puns are intended, my friends. Let's go! This is a vehicle, my friends, that at the time of recording of this video in August 2021 cost roughly 23,000 American dollars or 34,000 Australian dollars respectively. So back in 2021, by Moscow standards, this was considered to be a middle-class vehicle and sort of on the edge of what was referred to as the budget segment. We can point out straight away that Chinese auto manufacturing methods, design and approach in general is that Chinese always borrow something from the other car brands and manufacturers, sometimes making those cheaper and more accessible, and on other occasions coming up with really weird ways of doing things. This particular HAVAL Jolion 2021 model is actually assembled in Tula, Russia. Obviously, it's a GWM HAVAL approved, licensed and trained factory. And engineering here is clearly inspired by the early Japanese car models, but let's remind ourselves that we're recording this in 2021 and hot Moscow summer. So let's take a closer look, my friends. We have an absolutely basic tube-based reinforcement, minimum of anti-corrosion applied, thank God for that. What they've put here, and rather basic, pathetic kind of bits of vibro-isolation material to prevent the doors from rattling during the drive like an empty tin can. It's also quite obvious that Chinese learned from Japanese to do the electrical wiring quite right, so everything is rather well made and rather well neatly tied and bound up. So under some extreme weather conditions this will not rot and will not perish too quickly. Everything is quite nice and quite neat, almost makes me feel like it's a properly fancily made imported vehicle. I'd like to point out here the use of the isolating kind of felt-based material here, which is a bit basic and very old school, something we would expect from Russian Ladas really. And listen, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because remember that in the old USSR things were made not for luxury and comfort but to last. So yeah, laugh all you want, but these are time-proven Soviet technologies here we're witnessing without a doubt. But quite funny that Chinese exporting these cars to Russia must have thought that, look, why give Russians anything more fancy than that? They're used to this kind of stuff. This is what the sound insulation of the fifth door actually looks like, ladies and gentlemen, and similar very thin materials are used on every door actually. But in some select areas we are seeing a slightly different approach to sound insulation, where saving money and producing cars for the mass market kinda took hold. Take a look at this, my friends. They are using here some sort of sound insulation sponge-like material, for the lack of a better word, and here you take one sponge, my friends, and you can, well, make two sponges out of one and then sell two sponges for the price of one sponge. Basically, here you go, my friends, very simplified way to make some extra cash, and this is more or less how we see a lot of Chinese economy working these days, don't we? Where obviously the main negative side effect of this awesome process is lower quality of the end result product compared to the original product or design. But if all you want to do is sell a lot and cheaply, then you don't need to worry yourself with these kind of things and these cheapened elements. Nobody can see them anyway, right? Well, maybe the only exception is you and I right now opening this whole thing up. But seriously, looking at this car, we can clearly see how the manufacturing quality of the cheaper auto segment is actually quite massively improving with time. Take a look at this, for example, cover that I'm holding right now in my hand. Let's say some 6 to 7, let's say, years ago, there would have been no chance for us to take it off and take a look without breaking any of those little clips and latches here. Now Chinese are using better plastic quite clearly, and not one of these clips actually broke during our disassembly. And we must remind ourselves that Chinese population is roughly around 2 billion people. We can safely assume that they produce their goods for massive market, for the mass market, and we can't even dream of those kind of numbers. I'll point out that the product needs to be inexpensive to start with, and what I'm showing you here is obviously not of top-notch quality, fancy schmancy, something, I don't know, of some truly European or British manufacturers, but all of this is very, very functional, my friends. That's what we need to keep in mind. And we can see how the acceptable quality in this case meets acceptable price. Match made in heaven, one would say. Once again, the car right now in 2021 costs about 23,000 American dollars. We can also see here rather common among Chinese budget cars 1.5 turbo-liter turbo petrol engine and automatic transmission. And as far as sound insulation is concerned and interior quality, we've already shown that to you. The main danger of buying similar vehicles without a doubt is the risk of depreciation and difficulty of reselling, where your original 23,000 American dollars could turn into about, I don't know, 15-16K in about 3 years by my rough assessment. I deal with a lot of people and frankly doubt that anyone would pay more than that, and you need to keep it in mind as a non-expert who buys the car for personal use. What we do here at Klubный Servis Moscow is, among other things, is good quality sound insulation, which we are going to offer as a gift to the owner of this wonderful car, as the factory installed one you saw is absolute rubbish, my friends. Rear suspension here is rather simplistic, so if you're interested, take a look. Here at the back, as in most budget Chinese cars, we have a basic multi-link suspension module. It is definitely not a more advanced independent suspension of sorts, which you honestly couldn't expect for this kind of money, I would say. If we keep looking a little further, you can see a plastic fuel tank. So also see that it's not protected in any shape or form whatsoever. So God forbid you try and turn off-road for a little picnic in the forest. So please remember where your thinly wrapped and highly flammable petrol actually is. No steel protection whatsoever. Taking a closer look at the exhaust pipe and the muffler as well, you can see that it's under the frame, the beam here, which is kinda understandable as this part is kind of immovable, but most automotive manufacturers actually are placing these things differently, where the muffler should be above the supporting beam and the frame. If you look a little higher here, you will see absolutely amazing efforts of whoever was applying the factory-made anti-corrosion spray. Most importantly, you can see that it's here in some spots, yep, but we also can see here in several spots that it's absolutely dry. This, my friends, is obviously a front-wheel drive model as well. I need to point that out, which is why at the back here there is, well, nothing else particularly interesting or of note. Here we can see that the engine cylinder block is made of aluminum, which is actually not standard for smaller turbo petrol China-made engines. If you are following my narrative so far, you'll probably agree that it's a rather boring solution mechanically. When it comes to the frontal suspension here, yet again, everything is rather standard. We can see some like almost classic approach here to McPherson struts with some lower levers and some other drive elements, as you can see. This car has been off-road for only 400 kilometers. Of course, it's a Russian road conditions, my friends, keep that in mind, but we can already see some signs of corrosion, which is interesting and I guess tells us about the steel quality a little bit, among other things. But what hit me absolutely hard here is that the engine protection is not metal either. It's some kind of furry plastic, if I may say so. Please tell me, why does it have so many numerous holes? There are no hole covers. I'm just amazed here. I really honestly am at this construction. We are looking at the engine from Great Wall Motors. Some legends actually say that this engine is based on the one from Toyota Echo, believe it or not. Well, it's possible, as it's also a 4-cylinder block and compression ratio must be around 10. Here, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's stated at something in the ballpark of 9.3. So if that is true, then probably it's an okay engine. If you're not planning to race in this car at, I don't know, peak speed of 130 kilometers per hour, it's also a turbo petrol engine. Of course, it would be interesting to take a closer look at the turbine in here, which obviously is here to push the horsepowers a little higher output to about 140, 150 probably. Apparently some elements of this construction are made of cast iron, which gives us some hope for the possibility of a complete engine overhaul if required mechanically at some point. Like I said, the main cylinder block is made of aluminum, which in most budget cars of this class they would have actually cast iron blocks, funnily enough, especially if the engine is turbocharged. Well, here they must have tried to make the whole construction a bit lighter using a different metal. I am guessing, and possibly consciously limit the potential lifespan. Who knows, my friends, what the logic was here. Speaking of the automatic transmission, it's a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, and from what we are hearing, it is actually not a GWM or China-made transmission. So DCT here must be either German or American. Time to wrap up here our little narrative, my friends. What are my final thoughts about this wonderful vehicle of HAVAL Jolion 2021 model after spending some time with it? Look, it's a rather inexpensive, budget-friendly vehicle, and it would be ultimately unfair to expect too much from it, you know, or judge it too harshly. I'd say we should be probably borderline grateful to GWM HAVAL for making these kinds of inexpensive but, you know, rather pretentious almost and forward-thinking models of vehicles, and supply of these vehicles is relatively good. The car looks modern, even with its all of its cheaper elements. It has some nice screens, wonderful rear view camera, all imaginable safety features, and all of that, you know,
with our income, if we had to choose, I suppose, between a used Japanese, German, American cars, or even perhaps some new Russian-made cars, and couldn't afford anything else, well, I would definitely pick, funnily enough, this car if you live in the city. That's a very important addition here. If you regularly, however, go off-road, especially during winter conditions, I think you should please consider buying a proper four-wheel drive, whatever is available in your region and the country, anything that's within your budget. Finally, I'll say that if I wanted to be further harsh and fair, still remaining fair, I think I'd say that it is not a really solid example of a robust and super well-made Chinese car. Chinese cars are different, and some of them are really well made. I have a review of a true Chinese replica of an American Tesla, for example, that I was really personally impressed by, as no corners were cut there. It is a properly made Chinese vehicle that meets the expectations of present day and time. But it's obviously more expensive too. And here we have a compromise of a product. A pretty good car for people on a budget that will appeal to a massive market. I would like to thank you for watching. I'm Ilya, and hello from the whole team of us here at Klubный Servis, Moscow.